And I want to start with this very short story about two young fish. And these two fish were swimming along one day, merrily, when after a while, this older fish swam towards them. Nodded, and just kind of said, "Morning, how's the water?" And the two young fish kind of smiled and waved awkwardly, carried on going. And after a little while, one of the fish turned to the other one and said, "What the heck is water?" You know, sometimes the most obvious, important, surrounding realities in our lives are the one that's hardest to see, the one that we're immersed in. And I think it's a really helpful question every now and again to ask, like in our cultural moment, what waters are we swimming in? What do we not see? And I think one of the most prominent surrounding realities for us at the moment is individualism. And just to really quickly help illustrate this, I've asked for 4 wonderful volunteers to come forward. This is going to be the most overly simplistic explanation of how society and communities have shifted pretty much since the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century, just really quickly, because I think this could be helpful. So, our wonderful volunteers, if you just want to come to the front here, let's give these guys a round of applause. This is going to be very exciting. Now, 3 ways. Firstly, this is how communities work kind of pre-industrial revolution. If you guys want to kind of turn and face inwards like in a bit of a circle, lovely. Another round of applause, because that was really well done. And then looking at each other, and some people call this a thick community. Now, that isn't me being rude about these 4 wonderful people at all. It's that this idea that they're interwoven, right? Kind of work the land, different jobs in the community would have all worked towards. They kind of rise and fall as a community. Not perfect in any means, but like really well connected. And as time goes on, if you want to kind of turn face shoulder to shoulder, all looking at the group, lovely formation again. This is like Olympic level synchronization. Now they're looking, they're still connected, right? They're still close, but there's that less interdependence, less of that like rising and falling. People are looking elsewhere for jobs. People are looking elsewhere for interests. And so it's less tightly knit as a community. And then finally, if you all want to kind of look in different directions, this is the most challenging of the 4. Of the 3. And this is kind of like today, right? All facing apart. It's what sociologist Bauman called peg communities. In other words, we might all be facing the same thing, but we hang our individual needs, our individual way of looking at things on that line, right? There might be a common line, but it's momentary, and we can choose what we want to do. And this is how communities are now. So let's give these guys a round of applause. Expertly done. And all that leads to how cultural commentator David Brooks, New York Times writer, really helpfully summarizes this by saying, "We live in a culture of hyper-individualism. There is always a tension between self and society, between the individual and the group. And over the past 60 years, we have swung too far toward the self. The only way out is to rebalance, to build a culture that steers people toward relation, community, and commitment. The things we most deeply yearn for, yet undermine with our hyper-individualistic way of life." So we yearn for this stuff, and yet it doesn't become a reality in our lives. I'm going to give you some examples of how that plays out for us as a society. According to a recent survey, more than 25 million people in the UK reported feelings of loneliness, with over 2.5 million saying they felt lonely often or always. One Movember study suggested that 2.5 million people said that they had no close friends. And even more locally than that, when asked to what extent they feel lonely in daily life, 15% of respondents here in Southampton said between 6 and 10 out of 10. That's tens of thousands of people in our city saying that they feel lonely daily. Not only is this a reality today, but perhaps even more so the impact that this will have on future generations, so how we reflect and invest in our relationships now. These wholehearted and healthy relationships, I think, is so important. These are the waters, if you like, that we're swimming in. But I really feel that this is not what God intends for us to flourish, and that there can be a different way. lived out, the way together. It's one of our 3 values as a church is family. It's what we want to go after. It's so important. We don't just need to accept that this is now how society is. This is the way it is in 2021. And as John said earlier, Catherine did this fantastic talk on prayer last week. If you weren't here, do check it out. And she was taking us through the Lord's Prayer, really. And I was reflecting on this week. I just wanted to just really dive deep onto the very first word that we get in that prayer. So it obviously starts, Our Father, who art in heaven. This just word, our, the very first word, our. And in the Bible, this same word, it can be used for us. It can be used for we. But notice it's not used for me or my or I. Because we have a need, and as I've said, this is really what we're going after here at St. Mary's, for belonging, for community, and for meaningful relationships. Our. And I think Jesus gives us some really helpful guides of how to do this, of why this is important. He shows us in John 13, this is what he tells his disciples. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And these are like precious last moments of Jesus with his disciples before he goes to the cross. So just imagine the kind of weight of these words. It's like he suddenly wants to emphasize this new commandment. The way that we love each other will show the world what we're about, will show the world what Jesus is about. And there are so many of these one another phrases littered throughout the Bible, particularly in the New Testament. You've got a list here. Love one another. Be devoted to one another. Honor one another, serve one another, be kind to one another, forgive one another, pray for one another, bear one another's burdens. So we have this need for community, perhaps now more than ever. We have this commandment from Jesus to live it out. But let me just start with maybe barriers to this, reasons why we might not engage. And I think the first one is convenience. Sometimes it is simply easier not to, isn't it? Not to have to worry about going out of our way for others, not to have to worry about other people's problems. You know, the reality is we live in a world where we can unfriend someone at the click of a button. But the danger of this is we can kind of go through life with lots of acquaintances, but not really any close friends. And I think there's valid reasons for some of this as well. Like some of you would have been hurt by past relationships, things that have happened, broken trust. It's hard to get up and go again, I know. But this idea that actually it's just convenience that stops us, I'd really like to just challenge us on this, not to take the convenient option. And linked to that, secondly, is independence. Remember the PEG community, the final one of the illustration, this idea I can just kind of hang my thoughts and my preferences on things, whether or not I'm connected to others. I can do it my own way. Again, another key part of Catherine's message. I did it my way. And again, there's reasons that happen to help to kind of go towards this. Like lots of us would have lived in many different places at different times. Some of you might have just moved to this city. And it's hard to kind of start again. You know, it's sometimes tempting to just keep people at a distance because it is easier to remain independent. The other thing with this convenience and independence, if I'm really honest thinking about this, sometimes it is just nice to have people around me that affirm what I think what I think, laugh at my jokes, act like me. But the reality is that's not community. So convenience, independence, and finally consuming. And I think this is a big one in church, perhaps even more so kind of post-pandemic with all of the online stuff, all that we've been through. It is tempting to sit back and kind of get that bit of content, get that bit of entertainment. Happy days. You know, a phrase that I hear quite a lot is I don't really need to go to church to worship God. Right, I've kind of got the podcast, I've got the worship videos, these kind of things. I don't need to go to church. And while that might be true to a point, I think it's similar to, I don't really need to go home to spend time with Liz, my wife. But I can guarantee you that our relationship will be far worse off as a result of that. It's like that. We need each other. Even our view of community, and again, kind of find this deeply challenging myself, can be a bit consumeristic, like this kind of ideal pictures of like how I want my community to be. But I think theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who writes a lot about community and really lived this stuff out, an amazing writer, puts it like this, deeply challenging: the person who loves their dream of community will destroy community, but the person who loves those around them will create community. In other words, there's no secret kind of catch-all silver bullet to this. It's actually about loving one another. Straight back to those words of Jesus, those one another's from the New Testament. So I'd love to nudge us to reflect on this idea of like, it's not about what I can get from this church. It's not about what I can get from my community. It's what I can give. Because we are our surrounding waters, again, like program us towards this self-centeredness. It really does. So it's asking, like, rather than what you can do for me, it's what I can do for you. So let's look at these three things again, and just to offer, I think, a hopeful and different way. So the first one, convenience. Instead of convenience, it's about commitment. We want to be a church where we're looking out for one another, where we're showing up. I've seen amazing examples of this, particularly through tables, through such a challenging time that we've been through. One example sticks out to me. We heard that a couple in the church had got COVID and were really unwell with it. And so I kind of reached out to the table leaders to see, if they could help. But they were already on it. They'd already arranged food deliveries. They'd already arranged support. They were already rallying around this couple in need. A small but beautiful example of showing up, of being committed, even to a cost. Because when you know that someone is committed, all else flows from that. Like trust and vulnerability, healthy conflict, challenge, all of these things that are good flow from knowing that people are committed. Confession to each other, really being known, opening up. It's not about convenience, it's about commitment. Secondly then, instead of independence, we're going after connection. This whole idea of proximity, to actually be involved in each other's lives, leads to things like empathy, really understanding other people, unity. It comes from being connected. This idea that we're wed to each other's well-being, very different to the PEG community. Again, I've seen amazing, beautiful examples of this, particularly at Easter time. One of the tables bought, I think it was over 500 Easter eggs to give to workers in the local hospital, the ICU, and the children's cancer ward with special notes, just to encourage them, to kind of show them that they're there, that we're all part of this, we're all in this together, even though we have different jobs, we're rooting for you. Beautiful. We need to be connected. And the way I find it helpful to picture this is like a barbecue or like a fire pit. We were on holiday earlier this summer, had a lovely little fire pit in the garden, and actually, to my horror, there weren't any fire lighters, which usually makes me feel very good about myself, how quickly I can light a fire. So this time I really had to kind of put the work in, do all of the blowing and stuff. Got it going. And you really know you're onto a winner, don't you, when it's glowing, it's that really hot spot, and it's just going to take off all of the logs, whether it's coals or logs. But there's those moments where one rolls to the side. And no matter how much work you put in, how hot it is in the middle, if one rolls to the side, it goes out pretty much instantly, right? And that's a bit like us. We need each other. And just to take a moment to pause now, like maybe where do you see yourself in that illustration? After this time of being a bit more separated, like do you feel like you've rolled out to the side, gone a bit cold? Do you feel like you're connected, needing other people? It's about connection. And finally then, instead of consuming, it's about contributing. Contribution. We want to contribute here and not just consume. We all have a part to play. Can't say this clear enough. It was a theme that came through so strongly in our study of Ephesians just before summer, this picture of, all having different roles and ministries to participate in the life of the church. Elsewhere, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 12 of this illustration of the church being like a body. Many different parts, but all having a role to play, all essential. So just in case you have any kind of shadow of a doubt, it matters that you're here. It matters that you're involved and contributing here on a Sunday, definitely, but also through the week, like just coming and getting to see the people working and serving in the marketplace, or table leaders, or all different things, Alpha, those cooking, those serving, all of these different things happen in the life of the church because we contribute and not just consume, and the impact is far, far greater as a whole. It's amazing, and that is what this imagery of the church being the body of Christ is all about. And we see Jesus as the ultimate model for all three of these things, right? The way he kind of fully gets involved no matter what the cost, the way he draws other people around him and gets them involved in the ministry as well, all having a go, sometimes failing, but having a go, all in. And think about what he taught other people about serving others, putting others first, do to others as you would have them do to you. It's so against the grain of this culture of individualism. He is our guide on this. And again, just another kind of encourage you to reflect, like, how does this shape my life? Like, where am I committing here? Where am I connected? Am I connected? Where are you contributing? And on the flip side, perhaps, where are you looking for that convenience? Where are you looking for that independence, keeping self to self? Where are you looking just to consume that little bit? Big challenge for all of us. And this isn't just kind of nice ideas, good advice. We really believe that this is hope for our city and beyond, in this desperate need of community that we can show and pattern something else. And one of the main expressions that we give to this here at St. Mary's is through tables. And tables are our smaller gatherings throughout the week. And we kind of give it this line, living in and living out the way of Jesus. But they're places of connection. They're places to find belonging, friendship. And kind of say that friendship, community, families even are built around three things: time, tradition, and tables. Right? You have to spend quality time getting to know people. You might have special traditions with your friends or family, whether that's around birthdays or Christmas or marking other occasions. But then there's also tables, and this is why we've given it this name, right? Kind of sitting around the table, chatting long after the food's finished, going deep, getting to know one another regularly. It's a beautiful thing, even more beautiful perhaps now that we haven't been able to do it for so long. And also, while we're here, just really love to get this off my chest. Just a quick kind of lesson. An individual table is called a table. And plural tables, as a whole bunch of tables, is called tables. In other words, there's no such thing as a tables group, or there's no such thing as a kind of plural individual tables. It's a table or a group of tables. Is everyone happy with that? Just really want us to, when we're talking about commitment and contributing, let's all just contribute to saying that in that way. No such thing as tables groups in this church. Thank you so much for indulging my little bit of passive aggressiveness there. My apologies. But yeah, it's where we get to live in and live out the way of Jesus, where we grow, where we're transformed, where we share together, pray for one another, encourage one another. Again, a helpful imagery perhaps for this comes, I was thinking about as I was preparing this week, the movie Dunkirk. Has anyone seen the movie Dunkirk? Little show of hands. Fair few people. An amazing movie. Slightly disorientating when Harry Styles turns up just as a soldier to kind of get your head around. But it is an amazing movie, and it's based on this true story during World War II, where 400,000 Allied soldiers are left stranded on this beach in Dunkirk, basically sitting ducks for the Nazis. All attempts of escape have been thwarted. It just looks absolutely desperate. So many men, soldiers, likely to be wiped out. But then there's this amazing moment, and again, true story, but in the film it's so, so beautiful, where this kind of makeshift rescue mission from the UK happens, and around 800 fishing boats and other makeshift vessels kind of cobbled together. They all come out, and there's this amazing scene where the captain kind of looks out with his binoculars and sees all these fishing boats coming over the horizon. He just says, "I see home." And all the soldiers kind of erupt in kind of desperate cheer. They can't believe this is happening. Just image of these little boats, nothing special about them, nothing snazzy about them, coming through. And he says, "I see home." And the reason that's beautiful is because home came and found these soldiers at their biggest need. We want to be compared to those little fishing boats. We want to be people that bring home. Yes, we've got an amazing community here. Yes, there's more we can do. But we want to bring other people home into this. I was absolutely astounded at the numbers reading about this story in Dunkirk. The hope was that they'd rescue 40,000 people with this mission. But in the end, they brought home 330,000 of the soldiers, nearly 10 times the original aim. Isn't that just absolutely amazing? But when we connect that to those kind of scary stats I said at the start of people feeling loneliness and desperately isolated, like we can make a difference with these numbers as we're a church that brings home community to other people. And we see that obviously ultimately embodied in Jesus. Came down to earth, brought to bring us home, to bring us into community with him, community with others. And so we're just simply getting to participate in that as recipients of restoration. We get to be agents of restoration for those around us. It's a beautiful reality and a beautiful call for us in community to show another way, because in a world of loneliness and isolation and individualism, these waters that we swim in, we get to offer another way. And it's the way of Jesus together. Amen.